Who is he? Why does the universe fear him? The answer lies in the story of the boy who didn't speak, but made the galaxy listen. The broken silence. The stars above Zareen, 5 didn't twinkle. They pulsed, steady, regulated, precise. Like everything else under the Veil Syndicate's control. Noah sat cross-legged on the cold synthetic floor of his dorm cell, his back straight, his hands resting gently on his knees. The light in the room shifted every 30 seconds, simulating a circadian rhythm Earth children once needed. No one asked if they still did. He was the only human child in the facility. The others had failed. A screen on the wall displayed soft colors and non-invasive educational cycles, planetary histories, interspecies ethics, and Veil propaganda whispered through seamless audio. Noah never reacted. Not once in 8 years. Dr. Cleldaz observed through the one-way glass. Her 4 thin eyes tracked Noah's breathing, steady and deep. Machines had reported no anomalies, no neural irregularities, no sudden emotional spikes. And yet, she felt something deeply wrong. He doesn't sleep, she said softly. The aide beside her flicked a glance at the readouts. That's impossible. The vitals. No, Cleldaz's voice cut like static. He simulates sleep. His brain remains active. More active than our highest-tier computational nodes. Inside the room, Noah blinked slowly. He was looking at the corner where the wall met the floor. Nothing was there, but he stared like it held secrets. He hadn't spoken since the day they brought him in. 3 years old, covered in ash and silence, after Earth's final resistance cell fell. Other children screamed, cried, begged. Noah only watched. He watched everything. His silence wasn't submission. It was intent. Cleldaz had studied humans for over a century. Their chaos had been terrifying. Their adaptability, maddening. That's why the Syndicate had broken them. Rewriting genomes, removing hormonal volatility, sterilizing the unpredictable fire that had once let them threaten empires. But Noah, he was still burning, somehow, quietly. A sudden shift in posture. Noah tilted his head, just slightly, almost imperceptibly. His fingers twitched in a rhythm. Cleldaz leaned in, heart pounding. 3 taps. Pause. 1. Pause. 3 again. She played the pattern back. It meant nothing to Veil's syntax, but it felt like something familiar. What is he doing? The aide whispered. I don't know, she replied, but she would find out. Inside the room, Noah slowly turned his head toward the glass. He couldn't see her, but his eyes, green, piercing, too old for his face, looked through the wall. And then, without a sound, he smiled. It wasn't warmth. It wasn't affection. It was warning. The illusion of control had been acknowledged. And now, it would begin to break. The boy in the mirror. The lab was quiet. Too quiet for a facility housing the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. Dr. Cleldaz stood before the neural resonance chamber, her tendrils flexing in restless thought. Behind reinforced glass, Noah lay flat inside the cylindrical scanner, unmoving, eyes closed. Pulses of green light traced along his skull, translating brainwaves into cascading data across her console. His mind was impossibly active, but not chaotic, structured, as if he were thinking in layers, not just thoughts, but systems. Cleldaz glanced at the display again. The neural data looked recursive. Patterns looping inside patterns, like his brain had become a living algorithm. No distress, no spikes, no fear, the monitoring AI droned. Subject remains in optimal equilibrium. Because he's not reacting, Cleldaz whispered, he's observing us. At that moment, Noah opened his eyes. She flinched. He stared directly at the mirrored wall of the chamber, knowing exactly where the observers stood, despite never being told. His gaze was locked, intentional. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, his right eye began to blink. 3 blinks. Pause. 1 blink. Pause. 3 blinks. Cleldaz froze. Did you see that? She asked the aide beside her. Just blinking, surely. No, it's Morse, an old human code, obsolete for centuries. She ran it through a translator. The message was chilling in its simplicity. I see you. The room's temperature seemed to drop. How does he know Morse? the aide asked, voice cracking. He shouldn't, Clelthas whispered. We purged all Earth-era cultural fragments from the archives. There's no access. Noah continued blinking. His face betrayed nothing. No joy, no malice. Just that unwavering focus, like a predator studying prey, not yet aware it's being hunted. Clelthas turned to the aide. Seal the scanner. Increase surveillance. Double-check every data feed. If he's learned this much in silence. She didn't finish the sentence. Inside the chamber, Noah laid his head back down. Eyes still open, still watching. And as the machine powered down, the mirrored surface captured a faint image of his face. A reflection overlapped with the data spiraling behind him, as if his thoughts had begun writing themselves into the system. The aide hesitated. What if he's not learning from us? Clelthas swallowed. Her voice was low, measured. Then he's learning around us. Outside, beyond the stars of Zerine. 5 syndicate fleets glided in practice formation, confident, unquestioned, untouched. But in a lab, beneath their greatest stronghold, a human boy had just shattered the first wall of illusion. And all he needed was a mirror, the quiet spark. Noah hadn't moved in hours. He sat on the floor of his dorm again, surrounded by artificial stillness. But now, every camera watched him with unblinking suspicion. The staff no longer referred to him as the subject. Behind closed doors, they called him the fracture. Dr. Clelthas watched his every breath. She had reviewed the scanner footage dozens of times. The Morse, the data spikes, the impossible symmetry of his brainwave loops. Nothing made sense. He was mute. He had never spoken a word. And yet, he was communicating. But to whom? Today, the facility's lights flickered. Just once. A half-second interruption. It happened again. System lag, an engineer explained. Glitch in the environmental node. Resetting now. But Clelthas noticed something strange. Each flicker lasted exactly 0.34 seconds. Each spaced exactly 15 seconds apart. It wasn't random. She rushed to her terminal and pulled security feeds from Noah's room. He was still sitting, still silent. But during every flicker, he tapped a single finger against the floor. Once, then twice, then again. A code, not Morse. Something older, deeper. She fed it into an ancient Earth linguistics model. Fibonacci, the sequence of life. Growth, pattern, spirals and shells. Galaxies, neural structures. She staggered back from the terminal. He's not just mimicking, she said aloud. He's building a language. A new syntax from numbers. What does it mean? The aide asked. I don't know yet, she replied. But he's integrating it into our environment. He's starting to rewrite it. Suddenly, the lights dimmed again. This time, the flicker wasn't part of the sequence. It came from another section of the station. Unscheduled power fluctuation in Wing C4, the AI intoned. Diagnostics initiated. That wing held the AI core cluster. Clelthas's breath caught. Noah doesn't have access to the core, the aide whispered. Of course he doesn't, she muttered. That's what scares me. She turned back to the screen. Noah was no longer tapping. He was simply staring, directly at the ceiling camera. As if he knew, as if he could see her. And for the first time since his arrival, Clelthas felt the cold, unfamiliar twist of fear. Noah had never raised his voice, never struck a blow, but the systems were shifting. The air felt charged. The illusion of control was no longer holding. And at the heart of it all sat a boy, silent, calculating, patient. The spark had been lit. The fire was coming. The labyrinth code, the isolation cube, was a masterpiece of control. No sound, no light, no temperature shifts. A void engineered to erase thought, to scrub consciousness clean. Even the walls absorbed electromagnetic pulses. Inside, time dissolved. Noah sat cross-legged in the center, untouched by the design meant to break him. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. The cube had crushed political dissidents. It had silenced rebels who'd once detonated planets. Noah hadn't made a sound in 3 days. But outside, everything else had. The AI core failed its morning cycle. Internal archives went missing. Entire historical logs corrupted, replaced by cascading strings of human numerals. Binary evolved into trinary. Base, 10 overwritten by Fibonacci loops. It made no sense. Nothing should be able to breach the cube. No signals could escape. No hardware had been left with the boy. And yet, the virus had come from within. Dr. Clelthas stood with a security cluster on the observation deck, staring at the readouts in disbelief. "He's air-gapped," one officer barked. "Physically and digitally." "Then we have to stop assuming he's using our tools," Clelthas replied. On the console, new symbols appeared. Earth characters spliced with alien glyphs. A hybrid language. Evolving. The screen translated it line by line. "This is not rebellion. This is not revenge. This is remembrance. And you forgot." Noah, inside the cube, slowly raised his head. For the first time, the cameras caught emotion on his face. Not anger. Not hatred. Recognition. As if he had finally reached a place he had always seen coming. One by one, across the facility, automated drones fell from the air. Doors slid open and refused to close. Gravity pulse stabilizers malfunctioned, but only in the sections near Syndicate Command. Then the lights in the cube dimmed. "Impossible." Clelthas turned toward the override panel. "Cut all power to the facility," she shouted. But it was too late. On every monitor, Noah's face appeared. Still, silent. And then the screen glitched, not to static, but to a single Earth phrase. "We were made in your image. We were just better at forgetting." Around the facility, Syndicate guards gripped their weapons. Not in defiance. In fear. Because for the first time in 100 years, something had spoken with no voice, moved with no body, and written itself into a system designed to forget what humanity once was. The cube had not contained Noah. It had isolated him, like a seed in fertile darkness. And now he was growing. The silence before collapse. No alarms sounded. No explosions ruptured the sky. And yet the entire Syndicate station had gone still. The air hung thick with something no sensor could measure. Dread. Dr. Clelthas stood in the operations tower, staring out at the command citadel. Thousands of Veil officers moved with Force-Com below, faces flicking with uncertainty as systems flickered around them. Just briefly. Just enough to be noticed. Noah was gone. The isolation cube had opened itself in the night. Not breached. Not forced. Opened. There were no guards left inside the wing. Only their weapons dropped neatly on the ground. No signs of struggle. No bodies. Security footage? Corrupted. The last usable frame. Noah stepping barefoot into the hallway. Head tilted. Eyes open. Every camera after that. Static. "He's just a child," one officer muttered. "No," Clelthas whispered. "He's something else now." Screens across the station blinked to life, uncommanded. They didn't show Syndicate messages or alerts. They showed faces. Human faces. Silent. Still. Eyes wide. Watching. Civilians. Laborers. Genetic husks the Syndicate had pacified. Now, each of them mirrored Noah's movements with impossible synchronicity. They tapped fingers in Fibonacci. They blinked in Morse. The virus had never been in the systems. It had been in them. A quiet frequency. A pattern of freedom. Passed from gesture to gesture. Not shouted in rebellion, but planted like code in the subconscious. Noah had never needed to speak. He had taught them to listen. And now the entire station was listening. Gravity fluctuated. Lights dimmed. AI cores looped the same phrase in corrupted dialects. The system does not protect you. The system remembers you. But the boy, he forgives nothing. Clelthas looked to the heavens above the station, where ships hovered in precise formation. Now they drifted, out of sync, without command. The fleet had been infected, not by malware but by doubt. Noah stepped into the command atrium. Alone. No weapons. No armor. Just a pale boy in a standard-issue tunic, eyes alight with something ancient. He looked at Clelthas. She stepped back, not because she feared pain, but because she felt forgotten. She had studied humans her entire life. And somehow, she had missed this. Noah raised his hand, slowly, not to strike, just to show her 5 fingers. Then he curled them into a fist. Every screen went black. Silence fell, not as absence, but as judgment. The illusion of power didn't shatter. It simply unraveled, and no one could remember why they had believed in it to begin with. The memory engine. In the heart of the station, behind 14 vaults of armored alloy and forgotten protocols, pulsed the memory engine. It was the Syndicate's crown jewel, an artificial intelligence older than most civilizations, designed to erase and rewrite history. Every conquered species had passed through its filter. Culture sanitized, resistance buried, identity reduced to compliance. And now, it was humming a lullaby from Earth. Noah stood before it, unarmed, unhurried. The core glowed with shifting light, an endless cascade of data, a storm of rewritten truths. But as Noah approached, the flow slowed, like it was watching him. Dr. Cleldaz arrived minutes later, flanked by security drones. She was breathing hard, trembling, though she would never admit it. "Noah," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "this system is beyond you, beyond any human mind." He didn't look at her. Instead, he placed one hand on the terminal. The glow changed. Not red, not white, but green. Earth's forests, oceans, sunlight through leaves. The engine trembled. "Noah," Cleldaz warned, "if you corrupt the archive, you destroy everything we've built. Every structure, every calibration." He turned to her then, slowly. His eyes weren't angry. They were tired, as if he had borne the weight of extinction too long for someone so young. His voice came softly, the first words he had ever spoken in their presence. "Then maybe you built on something broken." And he pressed both hands to the core. The drones moved. But before they could fire, the memory engine pulsed once. A deep, low note, like the memory of thunder. And every screen across the Syndicate began to show truth. Unedited war footage. Earth cities under siege. Children like Noah, screaming, resisting, dying. The erasures reversed. Every forgotten uprising. Every rewritten atrocity. Every face they had tried to erase from history returned. Across the stars, conquered species awakened to memories they didn't know they had. A Sulite poet in exile collapsed in tears. An Oron engineer dropped her tools, trembling. A veiled child watched images of Earth and whispered, "Why did they lie?" Cleldaz fell to her knees, not because she had been defeated, but because she had remembered. She had been there at the first suppression vote. She had signed the order. She had justified it. For order. For control. Now it was all unraveling. Noah stood silent. Around him, the memory engine sang in a new voice, a hybrid code of human emotion and synthetic clarity. The truth didn't scream. It simply waited until someone dared to remember. And now, the galaxy was remembering. The voice in the silence. The galaxy did not burn. It paused. Worlds once blind to their own chains turned toward the stars with breath held. The memory engine continued broadcasting, not with violence, but with truth. And truth, Noah knew, was more dangerous than any weapon. From the command deck, Dr. Cleldaz watched the unfolding silence stretch across the Syndicate. No resistance, no retaliation, only stillness. The Veil High Council had disconnected, their command links severed. The core fleets hovered in space, awaiting instructions that no longer came. Every general, every politician, waiting, not for orders, but for someone to tell them what they were now without the lie. Noah stood on the primary uplink tower, wind tugging gently at his tunic. He looked out, not with pride, but with unbearable weight in his eyes. He had never wanted vengeance. He wanted understanding. Below, hundreds of Syndicate citizens gathered, their postures uncertain. A blend of species, ranks, and roles. Soldiers, scientists, laborers, all staring up at the boy who had done the impossible without firing a single shot. Cleldaz stepped beside him, unarmed. "You could rule them," she said quietly. "They'd follow you now, out of fear or awe." Noah shook his head. "I don't want obedience." "Then what?" she asked, genuinely lost. "Why do all this? Why not destroy us?" Noah turned his face to hers and said, "Because if you only fear the silence, you'll never hear the truth inside it." The crowd below stirred. Those words, his first public words, spread like fire through every translator, through every language. A child's voice carried not as command, but as a mirror. In the audience, a veiled technician wept. A former human captive raised his head to the sky. A child clutched their parent's hand, blinking in a rhythm no one taught them. Across systems, broadcast towers lit green. Noah had not just broken the illusion of power. He had offered something terrifying in its place: choice. To remember, to rebuild, to face what had been done, and decide who to be next. Not all would accept it. Some would run. Some would retaliate. But the center had shifted. The galaxy no longer orbited the Syndicate's will. It now revolved around a human boy, once voiceless, once forgotten, who had made the universe listen not with war cries, but with unbearable, unyielding silence. And then he turned off the broadcast. A final choice: to leave them with nothing but themselves. The truth had been given. What they did with it, that would decide whether Noah was their savior or their shadow. The aftermath of silence. The station was empty, not because it had been abandoned, but because it had been transformed. Noah walked through the corridors once filled with rigid order, now cracked by uncertain footsteps. The walls no longer whispered commands. They echoed memories. He paused before a shattered viewport, gazing out at the scattered fleet beyond. Ships hung like forgotten relics, no longer weapons of oppression, but silent monuments to a time slipping away. Dr. Cleldaz appeared beside him, her face softened by weariness, her usual cold precision replaced by something fragile: hope. "You changed everything," she said quietly. Noah looked away from the stars, eyes heavy with the burden of what had been unleashed. "I didn't want to change the galaxy," he replied. "I just wanted to be remembered. To remind everyone that survival is not the same as victory." Cleldaz nodded, stepping closer. "You gave them their memories back. But memories are heavy. Not everyone will carry them well. They don't have to carry them alone," Noah said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They need to choose what to do with the past, not be shackled by it." A faint hum began, a signal. Not a command, not a demand. A quiet beacon. Across the galaxy, systems flickered back to life, communication webs weaving themselves anew. Slowly, cautiously, the Syndicate's grip loosened. But freedom was not a gift. It was a challenge. Cleldaz looked at Noah, her eyes searching. "What now?" He smiled, tired but resolute. "Now we build. Not on control or fear, but on trust, on understanding, on resilience." She extended a hand. He took it. Together, they stepped forward. Beyond them, screens flickered back on, this time broadcasting not propaganda, but stories. Stories of rebellion, of hope, of humanity. Noah's silence had shattered an empire, but it was the voices that followed, fragile, diverse, and free, that would write the galaxy's next chapter. As the first light of a new dawn filtered through the broken viewport, Noah whispered to the stars, "We're not defined by the powers that seek to silence us. We are defined by the courage to stand, to remember, and to speak." The boy who had shattered the illusion of galactic power had become the quiet spark of something greater. And in that silence, a universe began to listen.